And now let's bring up the final slides of chapter 16 with the intention of beginning chapter 17 today. The final section in chapter 16, which you remember deals with income, welfare, and education politics, is the section on politics and education, or education, politics, and policies. Okay, remember our nation believes in equality. That is a foundational principle for our government. And when we talk about equality, we're talking about equality of opportunity. Everyone should have the equal opportunity for success. Not everybody begins with equal resources, right? Whether it's wealth, as far as money is concerned, or whether it's possessions. Also, where you grow up, where you are raised, whether you're raised in rural America or urban America or suburban. Those are areas where we don't have equality, but what we are shooting for in America is that everybody has the equality of opportunity. Of course, it's not perfect. We're still trying to get there. But probably the most critical area that this principle is pursued by American government is in education. Everybody is to have access to an education, which is basically a large tool in your toolkit to help you build a better life. Abraham Lincoln summed it up very well. We wish to allow the humblest man an equal chance to get rich with everybody else. When someone starts poor, as most do in this race of life, free society is such that he knows he can better his condition. He knows that there is no fixed condition of labor for his whole life. You know, at one time people were born as slaves or serfs, and they could not rise above that status. But in a free society, everybody has, or in theory, should have the opportunity to better themselves. They are not stuck in a fixed condition. One of the things you'll see in chapter 16 about education is we Americans believe it is the great leveler. Leveler, leveler. That is, while we're not all born equal as far as wealth and environment, if we all have access to education, it can help to level the playing field. So that major principle, you need to know that for the exam, that when it comes to education, the U.S. government wants to fulfill that ideal of everyone having equal opportunity. So we have public education in America, school systems which we believe are the best way to level the playing field. This is the main factor for American government in public education in America. And one of the sub-factors when it comes to public education, public schools, is a curriculum. The United States of America, as far as our school system is concerned, strives to present a standardized curriculum or standards-based curriculum. This is basically a common set of skills or areas of learning that each American student will learn in order to have a well-rounded education. You've probably heard of, maybe some older folks talk about, there used to be the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Even though writing begins with W and arithmetic begins with A. Now, I have one of my old high school transcripts, and I thought about showing you that, but I don't think I will. But you had to have so many. I think when I graduated high school back in 1980, you had to have 20 units that were math, history, English, science. And you know, I don't know if it was 5 units of each one, but the idea is that everyone gets a standardized curriculum. This is different than other countries where the schooling system is set up where people go, and even in the government-funded education, they go on a track which leads to a certain profession. So that starts before university in many countries. Like if you were going to be a carpenter, you would go through courses and curriculums to put you, that would be on that track to carpentry. Here in America, when you graduate from high school, you're not on a specific track, but you have a set of competencies, which is the basis for a quality education. It's going to be what we believe students should know, and what they understand. And you guys know, I don't know, maybe not, but maybe when you were in 3rd grade, in 8th grade, I don't know if they still do it, but there was ways to measure how we were doing, standardized testing. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Another big factor in public education is that and this is not as this is another sub-factor, but it's more diverse than curriculum. And that is the community in which you find yourself living and going to school in. Basically, communities that have more money, local communities, tend to offer a higher quality education. So for example, I know of a school in Lafleur County not how, not Arcoma. So that way there's no elephant in the room. But there is a school in LeFlore County that had a big power plant, not a school, a town, had a big power plant built outside of the town, which brought in a lot of local money. And since that power plant has come in, that community has built a nice new school facility. I would imagine they get new textbooks on the preferred schedule. That is an example of one community benefiting more than other communities because of the financial situation. Now we hear about inner city schools, you know, school systems in big cities where the neighborhoods are below the poverty line. And we hear about in government discussions about education, we've got to do something to help raise the test scores and the quality of education in those inner city schools. They need more money, they need more resources. So that is another sub factor when it comes to public school systems. And this is a factor that politicians try to really work on and make equal as possible. Over the years, our government has come up with grants and other ways that school systems can get funding to buy new textbooks, to buy classroom equipment, maybe to afford another teacher or two. And we need to know that the United States of America spends more money on education than any other democracy on the planet. And while we do have a federal Department of Education and schools can get money from the Fed, education is still primarily a local and state funded issue. This map here, which is now 7 years old, so it might not be completely accurate, shows what each state, what the percentage of their budget is spent on education. So the nationwide average was about 30%. Oklahoma fell right in that middle area, 31.9%. The states in red are the states that spend the most on education. It looks to be just under 40% of their budget. You know, a couple of years ago, there was a big thing in Oklahoma about our teachers need a pay raise, and they did. Because many teachers were going to Texas, Arkansas, and Kansas because they could get better paying jobs. And look at that, 3 of the states that are in red are right around Oklahoma. And then you got one in orange. So we're kind of almost, along with New Mexico, we're almost in the middle, and then Missouri up here, we're almost in the middle, the lowest state amongst this little region. Here's what each state spends on each student. This was 8 years ago, but this was a study by the Huffington Post. Notice that Oklahoma is in the lowest group. So while our total budget is in the middle of the nation, out of that budget comes one of the lowest per student spending budgets in the nation. It's us, Arizona, Nevada, and Idaho. We spend anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 per student. So I know you guys were in school 8 years ago, second, third, fourth graders. And so that's what Oklahoma was spending for you to go to school, public school. Here you can see that we are one of the countries that spends the most per student. Luxembourg is the highest. So we've got to, and that's one of the big things that our politicians discuss is education. The importance of education became really it became more heightened on a federal level with Johnson and his Great Society. Before then, 90% of education was funded by the state and local levels. But remember, Johnson had a vision for a great society, and he believed education was the key to that. And he believed that the birthright of every citizen in America should be the equality of an educational opportunity. One of the big things that was passed by in the Great Society, in the Great Society legislation was the Higher Education Act. And this is basically to provide more money for college students. Our nation leads the world in higher education. We have 4,000 junior colleges and four-year colleges. And so what this act did was it provided Pell Grants, student loans, and work-study programs for students. Pell Grants were just simply money that the government gave to students in lower and middle-class families. This was money that they did not have to pay back. Student loans were another big source of finances for students. And it used to be that there were some big banks that carried the loans at a low interest rate. But today, the federal government pretty much handles the majority of student loans. Another act that was passed in '65, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And the big thing that came out of this was Head Start. Head Start would be free pre-K education for students from the poverty, students in the lower class of the wage earning, below the poverty level. In 1979, we we added a federal agency called the Department of Education, but to demonstrate that the federal government is not a key player in public education like the states and the local governments are, the Department of Education is the smallest federal department with about 4,400 employees. So that's just a clear illustration of how the federal government is a secondary player when it comes to education. Now, in the last few years, this issue of school choice has been brought to the forefront. Along with having public schools for everybody, there are politicians, and this is a partisan thing, so this is mostly on the Republican conservative side, who would like to see more, would like to see different type of schools provided so that there is more of a school choice. Among them are charter schools and private schools. And they would want this choice right here. Have a well-funded, safe, modern private schools along with public schools, while the Democrats and more on the left want to stay with choice number one. Let's have well-funded, safe, modern public schools. The argumentation from the left and from Democrats is that if you allow for school choice, these private schools and these charter schools are going to divert funds from the public schools, and also your top students are going to be leaving the public schools to go to the charter and private schools. The Republican argument is, since you're paying your taxes for public education and your kids are going to school and they're your kids, it should be your choice. So that has been a debate issue amongst politicians probably the last good 10 to 15 years, and probably even last 25 years overall. There's been some debate about not debate, but I guess an implementation of what's called Common Core. Common Core originally was promoted by state education departments, which meant that each state could determine how well their Common Core was working. And so usually most states had proficiency tests, especially in math and English. I know here in Oklahoma, I think there was 3rd grade, maybe 5th grade, maybe both, 8th grade, and then 11th grade, there were proficiency examinations. And in 2001, a controversial act that Bush administration passed was the No Child Left Behind Act. Today, it is the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was passed under President Obama's administration. And if you look on page 500, the No Child Left Behind mandated national testing, national standardized testing. And what it did was it said, how well your students do on these national tests determines what kind of national funding you'll receive. So that was the controversy with No Child Left Behind, is it kind of took the standardized testing out of the state's hands and put it more into the federal government, and it had the strings attached that were financial strings. The one that was passed under Obama's leadership, Every Student Succeeds Act, still required mandatory testing, but it got rid of the one-size-fits-all approach. And it went back to saying, okay, the states should decide what is best in testing their students. So there was some flexibility there. And I think on the state level here in Oklahoma, there was a program that it might have came out when this ESSA was passed by the Obama administration, maybe under the Fallon governmentship here in Oklahoma, but there was a program where, or a standardized testing where every school in Oklahoma received a grade, A through F. And I'm gonna have to see if that affected funding on the state level. But anyway, Common Core is similar to standardized curriculum. The goal is to prepare our students in the it's escaping me, secondary level education, middle school, elementary school, high school, to ensure that our students are well prepared for post-secondary education. That is colleges, junior colleges, or into the workforce. So any questions on that last part of chapter 16 on education politics? Okay, very quickly, we're going to jump into chapter 17, just so we have our foot in the door. This chapter deals with foreign policy. Protecting America's interests. Foreign policy deals with our relationships with other countries. And in the pre-section of chapter 17, there were 4 chief instruments that we use when it comes to national security policy. I believe your brief was on these 4 things, which you'll want to know for the exam, and you can remember them by this acronym of DIME: diplomacy, information, which would be intelligence gathering, military, and economic policies. Economic exchange, as our textbook says. These are the 4 chief instruments that our government has at their disposal in dealing with foreign policy. Diplomacy 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 deals with the interactions of one country with another, which includes negotiations, treaties, those types of things. The lead agency in the United States is the Department of State when it comes to diplomacy. And the leader of the Department of State is the Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State works with our U.S. ambassadors to foreign countries. That's our main diplomatic branch, or our main diplomatic approach. We're going to go to information or intelligence gathering. This is basically the agencies that we have created that gather information and monitor other countries. These are your organizations like the CIA and the NSA. Agencies that gather intelligence about what other countries are doing, and they give their reports to the president and those in the upper levels of government. Other countries do the same thing, gathering information, intelligence on other nations. The next one is the military power. We do have a Department of Defense with a Secretary of Defense who oversees all of our armed force branches. Not only that, but on the international level, we enter into alliances like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. We enter into alliances with other countries that are based on military strength, military might. And then economic exchange. This involves trade between the United States and other nations, international trade, international commerce, along with giving aid to foreign countries. Some of the departments that are involved in this are the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Labor. Some of the world organizations are the World Bank and the World Trade Organization. These are all the national and international levels of economic exchange. So that gets our foot in the door for chapter 17 to finish it up on Friday. Do you have any questions? So remember, if you have anything left in Module 4, you have to get it in by tonight. You don't have until the end of the module, December 6th. That gives me extra days to finish up all the grading before finals. So if you still got the analysis on the Supreme Court, or need to do another discussion post to get all your posts in, or a brief, get that done by midnight tonight. If there's no questions, we will plan on seeing you Friday. I'll stay on a little bit if there's any questions. And other than that, bye-bye.
Bye.
See you, James.